All right, guys, today is Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. Today marks 73 days I have left to finish that black car over there for an upcoming event, October 8th. So I blew off the driveway with my leaf blower, brought the table back out, set it up. I took carb cleaner on a rag and wiped down all my tools and everything. Then I blew off the bag to get any dust off of it, so when I pull the bag off, it doesn't, stir stuff up and land in the engine. There's really no way to keep dust from getting in the engine when you're a garage builder like I am, but I've never had a problem with, being too bad in the past. Of course, I don't wait until it's super windy to come out here and assemble an engine. Like, there's not hardly any airflow today, so where I'm standing in the garage, I'll say. So that's the plan today, is to get the pistons and rods installed in the engine. And then at that point, I'm going to move on to the cylinder heads and go ahead and start the valve lapping process on those. I'm hoping I can at least get them both lapped in with coarse and fine today, and then move on to assembly, which probably not going to be able to get those done until tomorrow. It takes a while for me to lap valves. It's just a time-consuming process. But anyway, that is the plan for today. Got 2 things on the list. Hopefully I can get that thing done. I do need to mow my yard today. The grass is mainly dead, but I do have tall grass. I like to wait till last minute on mowing the yard because I absolutely do not like mowing the yard. I'm sure I'm not alone there. I don't find enjoyment out of that, but I think what I've decided to do is I'm going to wait till later this afternoon, because that's the right thing to do. Wait until it's well over 100 degrees before I mow the yard. But so I've got my big water mug filled up with ice water out here, and I do have plenty of Gatorade in the garage, or the house, in the fridge. So I do have plenty of things to hydrate with. I do stay hydrated this time of year. I have almost went down from working in the heat before, and I learned my lesson, and now I drink lots of fluids. So anyway, I guess I'm going to get to it. So this might be the 3rd time I've showed this in a video, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I don't want y'all thinking I'm skipping it. So anyway, this is another new ring set and new rod bearings that I bought. I'm pretty much just replacing everything again, even though the engine didn't have probably 30 minutes runtime on it. But I mainly changed the main bearings because I had the ones that I didn't get the ones in it that I wanted first time. This time I do. But anyway, what I'm doing now is checking ring gap. These are just Hastings cast rings. I don't ever run Molly rings because the very first time I ever did it, I couldn't get the rings to seat, and ended up having to we actually drained the coolant out of the engine and run the car, and it actually seated them. So that wives' tale does work for sure. I've done it, but ever since then I've run cast rings. Anyway, what I do is I take the top ring, because your second ring has a different measurement. I take the top ring, and then I take a piston with the oil control rings on it, and I get the ring started in there, and then you can use the piston to push it down. Since the rings aren't expanded, the oil control rings stick out enough that it basically sticks it down in there that far. So I've done all 4 over here, and then at that point you take a feeler gauge set and you find out what your gaps are. Now on a top ring, it's 12 to 20 in my book. I have an old, very old How to Rebuild Your Small Block Chevy book. It's 12 to 20. I don't remember what the second ring is. I'll have to go back and look. But anyway, basically checking these out to make sure it's good to go. So it is a little bit of a tedious process. And I have before, because you can't always count on every bore being exactly the same, and every piston ring, it's mass produced, can't be exactly the same. So you might have a little bit of variance. So if you have one that's too tight for your liking, or too loose, I guess, you can kind of switch it out with another one that you're not happy with, and sometimes it will, set it up a little bit better, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it's a tedious process, but it's something that's got to be done. So I'm going to go ahead and get to it. I want to at least get these pistons in today. All right. So I started putting pistons in, decided I better at least video a little bit of something. which you guys have seen me do this several times already in the last few months. So I just got back from my lunch break with my wife in the house, so I stopped midway of what I was doing, so I'm trying to remember what I was doing. So I got the rod bearing in the rod, I've got lube on it. I got the cap protectors on there, the thread protectors, whatever you want to call them. I got the piston rings on. They are clocked 180 degrees from each other. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the piston here. And a little oil in the cylinder. I've already got the number 1 piston in it. Alright, make sure my mark's going to the front. So I've already washed all this stuff, but I like to go back over everything, wipe it down again, make sure there's no dust or whatever on it. I already put oil on the rod bolt threads. So I use Royal Purple's Max Tough Assembly lubricant. It is it's more oily than a grease, but it is very sticky. It bonds to whatever you put it on pretty well. You know, if you're gonna assemble an engine and you're not gonna install it in the car for a long time, you probably ought to use an assembly grease. But I like the Royal Purple. The thing for me is I like using the liquidy stuff, because when I go to prime the engine with a drill, that assembly grease, it's harder to get the oil to push through all the passages because that grease is so thick, you know what I mean? So, just me, everybody's different. But I torque these to 45. I'm only going to go a little ways first. I don't normally stop when I'm torquing something midway, but I do on the rods. Go back and double check. I know I doubled these, but I'm just going to make sure on number 1 there. All right. And back over again. 6 more to go. So this engine was, when I put all the piston rings in and pre-fit them to gap them to check them, I did take one from here and put over here. I took number 2 and replaced it with 5. And that got my gaps a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable with it, we should say. Man, today's the worst I've seen on them GoPros. They are overheating and just shutting off. It's I remember them doing that last year, but not as much as it, like 3 times today so far, but it doesn't take long at all either. So I guess I'm gonna have to take them, every time I use them, shoot something, I'm gonna have to take them in the house and let them cool down. Like everything out here, just touching it feels like it's been laying in the sun because it's so hot out here. But anyway, I got all the pistons and rods in. Everything's torqued, and I went back through the whole thing again with the torque wrench just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So what I did basically after I finished torquing the rod caps is I went through and looked at every little area, especially here in the front, for something that might be binding up or cause an issue, because here goes the wind kicking up. Anyway, whatever was knocking in the front of this engine has still got me nervous, but I'm not seeing anything, man. Anything that can cause an issue, but I ain't gonna know until I get it back together, so we'll see how it goes. But well, now it's time for, I guess I'm going to put the camshaft and the timing chain in it, oil pump on it, and I texted my buddy Jason again today to see if he's looked at that engine, that 350 that's over at his place, that's mine, to see if it's got that driver's side oil pan, dipstick oil pan on it. I think that thing's driver's side, I just don't remember. That's been 2017 or 2016, something like that, I think, since I sold him all them cars. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put the camshaft in. This camshaft I'm putting in this time is a hydraulic flat tappet, and it is my favorite cam. It may not necessarily be the correct cam for my application, but I do like it. I like the sound of it, we'll say. I have run a bunch of these. This is the Summit 1105. This is SUM 1105 at Summit Racing Equipment. I have run a bunch of these cams. More than 10 for sure. This was my go-to cam every time. But all my stuff's been pretty much mild. Nothing extravagant, you know what I mean? It's still got Molly lube on it from when I put it on there, because I put this in that 400 first and then ended up getting the roller, so I never did start the engine with this cam in it. It has Molly lube all over it. I just ended up putting it back in the plastic and back inside the box, but I'm going to go ahead and slather it some more. I also put it on the bottoms of the lifters. And I installed them, which I'm not ready for the lifters yet. Going really slow so I don't nick them bearings. I've showed this before. That is not a fancy tool that I bought just to install camshaft. That's actually the handle off an old cheap grinder, big grinder or a buffer. I think it was a buffer actually. And the thread was actually metric, but it's that metric thread. I don't know what it is, but it's really close to the factory 5/16 by 18 and a small block Chevy cam. So I run a thread die over it and altered the thread pitch on it for 5/16 by 18, and now it works for my camshafts. It's redneck, but it works. Now it's time for a timing chain. Actually, it might be time to hydrate and take these GoPros in for a cool-off round in the house. I probably ought to take my dog out too, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up in plastic. Every time I go to stop working on the engine for even if it's just a couple of minutes, I put the bag back on it, keep the stuff floating in the air from getting in it as little as possible. Also, it's going to get stuff in it no matter what you do. It's just the way it is when you're building the engine in your garage or driveway. Alright, I can't get my GoPro that's on the tripod to turn back on, so I'm going to have to let it cool completely off, I guess. So right now I'm going to go ahead and put the oil pump back in it. I've had it stored in a brand new Ziploc. Let's see. 9/16 ain't gonna do it. Oh crap. I gotta go get my 5/8 socket. Alright, now I'm gonna put the timing chain on. I don't even know if I have everything out here. I'm just installing it straight up. I don't ever advance it or retard it at the gear. I just do straight up every time. Alright, so that cam button has a little lock plate with these tabs that you bend over against the side of the head of the bolt to keep it from moving. So I'm not going to install that lock plate on this since it's just a hydraulic flat tappet. So what I'm going to do is dig through my star washers. I'll see if I have a set of star washers, real thin ones to put on here. Alright, so what I have is a set of these star washers that come in those Felpro one-piece oil pan gaskets, because I have ARP 12 points for this engine bolts for the oil pan, so I don't use the black oxide ones that come in the Felpro kit. So I'll use those star washers on these cam bolts, because you get 4 of them that are 5/16, which is what these are. Everything's still pretty oily from being in the engine before. I just took it off and put it right in a Ziploc bag. So. So I always stick a rag down inside these sockets. Make sure they're, sometimes I'll spray them off with carb cleaner. This one actually looks pretty clean, but just make sure there's no dirt and gunk down in there, and then stick it up here on something and get it dirty. All right, guys, I've got the pistons and rods in, got the oil pump on, got the timing chain in. I don't ever torque the timing chain. I just put it on there and tighten it up. But I'm pretty happy, man. I got a rotating assembly back in the 406. I'm happy that I got it as a rotating assembly again. However, I didn't find anything that would cause a knock, and I've looked over everything really well. So now I get to clean up my mess here, and I got to clean up all this mess, throw all this stuff in the trash. Let's see, I'm not sure what time it is. Let's see what time it is here. 3:43. I thought it was later than that. Well, hell, I got time to go ahead and lap some valves. Well, I'm gonna clean off the table here and I'm gonna start lapping valves. All right, so I'm gonna start in on the lapping process. I'm gonna start out with coarse compound first. And I've got the head set down here. I'll show you what I did to, this is redneck, but this is just how I keep track of everything. So I take a ball burr on a die grinder, and on this little flat pad here that's hidden when the valve cover's on, I've got 2 marks on this one. I've got 1 mark on the other cylinder head. So I've got this 4x4 post here. These are the valves out of the cylinder heads. This one has 1 die grinded dimple right here, and it says front. So this is front to back on the head with 1 indent. This one I have 2 indents. So this is from where the dents are down, basically, is the order that they came out of the cylinder heads, which is exactly the way they're going back in. So I've already cleaned these up. I've blown them off real good. I ran brushes through all the bolt holes and all the valve stem holes, everything with brushes, and cleaned everything up real nice. It did start surface rusting a little bit, just sitting there overnight in the garage, but it'll be all right. So I've got some white assembly grease here that I'll put a little bit on these valve stems, so I'm not putting them in bone dry when I'm sitting there, you know, lapping the valves, because I use a drill when I do it. I don't use suction cups. I did it once and it put blisters on my hands. So anyway, that's how I'm going to do it. So what I did was, since I went in here and this metal's all really clean, it's going to be hard to see how they're lapping. So I'm going to try, this is a blue Sharpie. I don't have any Dykem or machinist dye or whatever you call it. So I used a blue Sharpie and I just colored in the valve seat here. And I'll probably do them all, but I want to see what it does on these in particular. So when I start lapping them with the coarse compound, this should technically work, I hope. Alright, put a little bit of this grease on the valve stem here. Just a little bit. I don't need to slather the crap out of it or nothing. You know, it's kind of funny, everything I've ever done in the past has mainly been done in the floor because, you know, I don't have workbenches and stuff. Always worked in small places, you know what I mean? So I'm just used to it. Boy, it really offends some people. They just can't stand to watch me work on the ground for whatever reason. But doesn't bother me a bit. Better put on the spectacles. All right. Another one of them deals where everybody's different when they do something, but this is the way I have done it for years. The biggest thing for me is when you clamp your drill on there, don't like super chuck it in there where it'll put marks in your valve stem, because it'll have marks on it and you won't be able to get it out without galling up the valve guide. Probably going to take a little bit more than that. I just kind of want to see what it's doing on it. Well, I got a uniform ring around the valve already. Man, it's nice and uniform. Man, that looks awesome. That looks really awesome. Man, I can live with that. They may not even need coarse compound. Man, I am happy with that. That was rather quick. Those 305 heads took quite a bit of work for my truck, but these heads don't have that many miles on them from being at the machine shop. From the machine shop. They were on an engine I had that was used. I bought a car that this engine was in, but it didn't have a whole lot of miles on it. got a nice uniform ring around that intake valve too. Man, that looks good. Nice, very nice. All right. Well, if they all turn out being that easy to get lapped in, I'll be happy. Debating on mowing my yard. It's starting to get cloudy. It ain't supposed to rain till Thursday evening. I definitely need to mow before that. I think I'm gonna break and mow the yard, guys. Go ahead and get that done, and then I'll work on this tomorrow. Priorities, I guess.